Hi everybody. I want to talk a little bit about how to use the chi-squared distribution here. So here's the chi-squared distribution in the back of your book. And again, you can either look up the corresponding values in your table, but just like the t distribution, right? The values in the table are not the area. These are the chi-squared values that correspond to these areas. And again, the chi-squared distribution, the shape will depend on the number of degrees of freedom. Remember, as the number of degrees of freedom here increases, the graph becomes more and more normal. But one thing to notice about the chi-squared distribution is it's not symmetric. So you can't, if you're doing a two-tailed test, you can't just say, for example, find one area and then subtract it to get, double it to get the other area. Um, so, so for example, let's say you wanted to find the critical values that separate the middle 90% of the chi-squared distribution. So this part here represents 90% of the data. So you have 5% area in each tail. So you'd have a chi-squared distribution that looks something like this. And so what you'd want to do then, using the table here, this is table 7, is you'd want to look at the, again, this involves 15 degrees of freedom. You'd want to look at the row that it has 15 degrees of freedom, and they correspond to the area to the right of being 0.95, right? Because that would give you this area here, because you're saying that the area here to the right, all of this would be 0.95. And then you want to find the area so that the right is 0.05. So you need to find those two values. So looking along this row, you would get, for 0.95, you get 7.261. And then for the 5%, you'd get 24.996. Now, alternatively, you could also look up those, calculate those values in StatCrunch. If you just go to calculators, go to stat, calculators, chi-squared, and then again, just put in your values. So if you want to find the chi-squared value, so again, you have to change the number of degrees of freedom to 15, because that's what we've got for this particular problem. If you want the chi-squared distribution, that would give you the area to the left is 0.5. That would give you the 7.261 value, which we saw earlier in the table, right? So if we go back to the table for 15 degrees of freedom, 0.95, that gives you that area. So we don't want to put 0.95 in this because this assumes that the area to the right is 0.95. So in StatCrunch, we'd want to put 0.05. And then here, all we have to basically do is just turn the arrow around, and that should give us our other value here. I guess I gotta change that now also. And so that's where the 24.99579 is coming from, which would be, again, for 15 degrees of freedom, that would be the values that the area to the right is 0.05. So so this would be the area to the left, and then this would be the area to the right. So hope that gives you sort of an idea of what to do for those. If you guys have questions about stuff, let me know.